Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon online. It's good to see everybody online. We hope to see you in person soon. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Akron. We are part of a super duper team of 1.4 million very passionate individuals in 46,000 plus clubs around our world. We are both an international organization and, as we all know, a wonderful, strong local community leader. Together, we lead change in our own backyards and around the world. I'm Linda Farkas, and I'm honored to be your 2022-2023 president of our club. And thank you so much for being here today. If you would please stand so we can say our pledge, our four-way test, and our invocation today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our four-way test. Truth is fair to all concerned. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial for all concerned? Thank you so much. And Connor is going to give us the invocation today. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Linda. All right, everyone. Well, this is a little bit off the cuff, but I was looking always for inspiration sometimes. The national, what day is it today? And it's National Care for Kids Day, National IT Professionals Day, and amongst other things that are very obscure, National Voter Registration Day. So, those three things, I was thinking, what do those kind of have in common? And I got to thinking about the future and how we all have the ability to shape the future in one way or another via our actions and what we do or we don't do, what we say or don't say in our lives each and every day, what we do as a club in unity as Rotarians and can have a positive impact on the world. So but in those three things, national caring for kids, IT professionals, voter registration, you think about, the kids, the youth of our nation and of the world. They are the future. What can we be doing to come alongside them, to invest in them, to foster them and nurture them? IT professionals, who can we thank? Brian Casarco here in the room, but any other IT professional in our life, and technology is the way of the future, and that's only becoming more and more rapid. Who can we thank for that? And I thought that was a neat tie-in. And then, of course, National Voter Registration Day. One of the greatest freedoms we have in this country that far too many of us take for granted, I believe, and even local elections that it's easy not to vote in, but the ability that we have without getting too much into the politics of everything, but really just to shape our future through the leaders that we choose to put in office or not to put in office. So if you just quickly bow your heads with me, and I'd just like to ask you, Father God, just give us wisdom in our decisions when we go to the voting booths later this year or at any time, any season, and just in selecting who our leaders are going to be. But really, Lord, this is more about just a prayer of thanks and gratitude for the freedoms that we have in our great nation. Thank you for the gift of children, of little ones. Help us to, again, come alongside them, to nurture them, to invest in them, to support them, to protect them. We thank you for the IT professionals that are a heck of a lot smarter with technology than I am, and that so many of us are, that are shepherding us into the future as well. Bless this meal. Help us to have a great meeting as a club. Amen.
Thank you, Connor, so much. Tom Knauer, there you are, sir. Would you like to introduce and welcome our guests, please?
David, Sunrise Rotary is here today.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me back. Sorry, I couldn't. I think that's it.
That's it?
Okay. That's it.
Hi, Bill. And Jim, welcome. Jim Redmond, it's nice to have you too today. We have some wonderful extra special Rotarians here today. So thanks, Bill, for coming. It's good to see you. And Jim, and everybody's wonderful. So it's so good to have everybody here. So Rotary ambassadors. Anybody been visiting out and about? Anybody online? I had the privilege of going up to the Cleveland Club on Thursday, and it was a very exciting luncheon, and it was the invitation to the past district governors for 6630. So it was a fun time to see a gathering of past district governors. So it was a great Thursday up in Cleveland. So Connor, can I bug you again, may I please, sir, to do happy dollars for me?
No problem. Yeah, I think my mic.
Everybody's got to be happy about something today.
Yes.
I'll kick it off. I'm happy. My first foray into, no, I am not actually a minister, despite Dan Riemenschneider telling me the Rotary chaplain years ago, but my first foray into officiating a wedding is this coming weekend, so doing that for my wife's best friend down in Akron Hills, so that'll be fun. And now I've been asked to do it several more times for family now that they know I'm doing this once, so we'll see how it goes, but happy about that. Should be a fun weekend. Anyone else happy? That was, 5 happy dollars, because that's all I have, so. All right, Katie.
Two happy dollars. One for everybody has on the table tonight is Change for a Change, raising money for the Rotary Camp at Mercedes Tavern at the behind the CVS on West Market Street. All tips and donations will go to the Rotary Camp. It'll be a 50-50. Karen Herluck and Julie Randall and I are guest bartending, but there is real bartenders on hand to handle anything more complicated than a glass of wine. And the second dollar is, Connor, you mentioned National Voter Registration Day, and it made me think, so my husband's in Columbus this weekend. He's down there today. He'll be down there probably till about 9:30 or 10 tonight before he gets to home. He was down there yesterday for 12-hour meetings. He's up for keeping his seat on the State Board of Education. So if you haven't registered to vote, I would urge you to do that. And you can always ask me for his website if you'd like to see where he stands. But I'll tell you one thing he stands on, that's workforce development. And when you have Intel coming and Amazon warehouses being built and battery factories coming, you need people to work there. So that's his goal. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. All right, here, David, and then I see Bill, and then I'll make my way around. Cheryl.
Good morning, everyone, or actually good afternoon. From Medina Sunrise Rotary, we celebrated our 28th birthday today, so just a baby compared to you. And we celebrate that on Public Square in Medina because we are called the Sunrise Club to watch the sunrise. And you probably remember past Mr. Governor Mike Kovac, he gave me this pencil-sized tree, which we planted. It was from Paul Harris. The tree is now 45 feet tall.
Wow.
I'll send you a photo.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, 5 happy dollars. Thank you very much, David. Bill, good to see you.
I got 5 happy dollars, so 3 for my 3 kids, because I just had a parents' weekend down with my oldest in Cincinnati, which was really, really cool, and it kept me from being at the Browns game, which was even cooler. So one of those is an unhappy dollar, probably. And then the final one is Regatta. Regatta Saturday, everybody. We've got a really good turnout plan. We're doing really well on our fundraising, but we always need to do more. So it's a great event. I'm pretty sure most of you have been there in the past, but grab somebody, try to get them there who hasn't been there, and they probably will make sure that they never miss it. So, weather looks beautiful as always, right? Because the regatta is always beautiful, and I hope that we see a bunch of you there. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll have to make sure I say no in the future if there's a wedding officiating opportunity that conflicts with regatta. That's the only reason I won't be there.
Well, Connor, congratulations. You have joined the ranks of my husband, who has done it
a couple dozen weddings, including one last weekend. So it's really fun to do. I was going to remind about the regatta, but Bill did such an eloquent job. I don't need to, but don't forget, next week we have an off-site meeting. I'll pop that up on the screen in just a minute when Linda talks about it. Make sure you RSVP before 3 o'clock today. 3 o'clock. What's that time?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. We need you registered to go. And that's it. I'm just happy. There you go.
Thank you, Reverend.
That is the title I chose.
Reverend. Yeah, I'm happy. This weekend I get to have all three of my sons in town. I get to play golf and they took some money from me. And now, I now have a social life because I'm going to the Mercedes bar tonight, the regatta on Saturday night, and we're gonna raise a lot of money, right, Bill?
That is awesome. There we go.
Okay.
All right, anyone else happy? All right. But anyone online happy that we are not saying or missing? Any hands up? No hands up? All right.
I'm happy. Connor?
Dr. Rob's happy.
No, I'm sorry, my hand was up, but it's down. I'm happy. I have 10 happy dollars. 5 because I'm here with John Daly and he's dressed in his Rotary shirt. So he's great. There's looking at you there, John, having his lunch. And at 1 o'clock this morning, I became a grandpa for the second time.
All right.
I have a 7-pound, 5-ounce grandson that came 4 weeks early, but he's doing well. And his name is Jude Robert, or JR, or I call him J Rob, but that's okay.
J Rob. Well, congratulations, Dr. Rob. Very exciting. Definitely worthy of a happy dollar announcement there. Congratulations again. Anyone else? All right, I think I'll hand it back to you, Linda.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Lots of happy people. Congratulations, Rob, on being grandpa again. Want to remind people, if you recalled, David Hall's father passed away last week, and I did put the information up on the table where Jerry's seated this afternoon. Due to the fact that the service is tomorrow at 1 o'clock up at Hudson, we canceled our Akron Canton Food Bank work for tomorrow at 4:30 to 6:30. So we will again, they'll be back at the food bank in October. So October 19th is the date, 4:30 to 6:30. And Katie, great and good luck tomorrow night for Change for Change. So, I mean, it's tonight, that's right, sorry. And it's 5 to 8, so that'll be a fun time. And as Cheryl said, don't forget, we're off-site next week. We're at Akron U at the Emily Davis Gallery. And Jerry, thank you for setting that up. You have to 3 o'clock this afternoon to make that RSVP for that yummy box lunch that we're going to have there at the university. So please don't forget, again, 3 p.m. And Jim, thanks and Bill for calling attention to the regatta this Saturday at 6 o'clock at camp. It's a fun time, so it'll be great. And our wonderful guest speaker today, we're plugging Boo at the Zoo, and Jerry has her Boo at the Zoo shirt on. So there's wonderful opportunities. It's a lot of fun. It's community outreach, and we need to put our Akron Club out there and just have fun giving candy and doing good PR with our community. So the Saturdays are the 15th, 22nd, 29th of October, and then they have Sundays, the 16th, 23rd, and 30th, and there's 3-hour shifts, but it's a lot of fun. It's a ton of fun, so don't forget. And then one more item quickly is, if you recall looking in the newsletter that we have, Cheryl did a great job with this. today is our last meeting here at Buns. So the first Tuesday in October will be over at the Greek Orthodox Church on South Union Street. And the wonderful chef that used to be at Tangier's is continuing, and so he'll be our cook for our luncheons that will be over there. So again, next week we're off site, and the following week we're over at the Greek Church on Union Street. So it'll be round tables, tablecloths, napkins, a wonderful buffet, and lots of fellowship. So please reach out to our fellow Rotarians and encourage them to come. So we're excited about the change, so we look forward to that. So any other announcements that we may, anybody online want to announce anything? Okay, well, Jerry, it's back to you, my dear, to introduce our wonderful guest speaker today. So excited to have the CEO of the Akron Zoo here.
Okay, I am a member of the Zoo Squad 2022.
Over here.
And will be, also Zoo Squad 2023. For Watan, which is another service organization. And I'm delighted to introduce Doug because I have a really long association with the zoo. 71 years, that's my age. I started my life across the street from the zoo, so lots of wonderful memories, and also my kids at the zoo. It's a great place, and of course my family, my mother, it's all the zoo. It is definitely a zoo. So here, Doug Piekarz is our speaker, president and CEO of the Akron Zoo. He holds a bachelor's degree in animal science from Rutgers University and a master's degree in biology, ecology, and evolution from Montclair State University. He has worked in the zoo field for over 35 years, spending the first decade of his career at the Wildlife Conservation Society's Bronx Zoo in New York, and the last 25 years at the Akron Zoo. Again, his resume is incredible, and I'm not going to read the rest of it because we're all excited to hear Doug speak. So Doug, please come on up.
Thank you, Jerry, and I appreciate the introduction, and I'm not one who likes to talk about myself, so I also appreciate moving over to the conversation. Okay, let's see. What I have on the laptop right now says this meeting's being, all right, got it. And I ought to be able to just press share, correct? There we go. And move this. Okay, perfect. I'll move this up to the podium, which hopefully will not block the camera. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me today, because the one thing I do really enjoy talking about is the mission of the Akron Zoo and what this community means to the zoo and what the zoo means to the community. That's really the bottom line as a whole, and I'm just an incredibly lucky fellow who gets to follow his heart, because my heart and the mission of the zoo are in the exact same spot. And I've always said, when your heart mission and your work mission continue to come together, your worst day at work is better than the best day for somebody who doesn't like their job. And so I consider myself incredibly lucky to be able to do that every day. So with that being said, I'm gonna, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that's what you were doing. All right, I'll stay here. I tend to be fidgety and walk around, and I express myself with my hands. It just comes from the genetics. But, so what do we do at the Akron Zoo? Our mission is to connect your life to wildlife while inspiring lifelong learning and conservation action. So effectively, I always talk about it as our mission triangle. If any decision in front of us doesn't connect people to wildlife, doesn't inspire lifelong learning, and doesn't move people to conservation action, we don't do it. That's what we're all about. And a good mission really defines what you're all about and lets everybody who wants to be part of the mission see themselves in it, and then allow them to take action and explain it to others so that you can really feel the passion as it moves throughout the community. We know that we enhance community education and conservation, and not necessarily in that order. Sometimes it just falls very naturally depending on what the particular aspect we might be looking at is. But I'm going to take you back in time first to the humble beginnings of the zoo. When Jerry talked about 71 years ago, this is kind of what she was talking about. So the Akron Zoo wasn't even originally a zoo. For some of you in the room, you may have memories of talking to your parents or your grandparents about Perkins Woods, and then the Akron Natural History Museum. The way the zoo actually came about was the Natural History Museum in Perkins Woods opened to great fanfare and lots of attention. And then very shortly after, the attention really died down. And the administration in the City of Akron's Parks Department was looking for a way to really drive attendance and attention to that Natural History Museum. So they ended up building Mother Goose themed animal habitats around the Natural History Museum. And it ended up that that was literally one of the building blocks of what eventually became the Akron Zoological Park. It also helped that in 1917, a gift to the city of Akron of 2 brown bears from Europe were actually installed in Perkins Woods, and that's what number 3 on this particular map is. So if you wanted to say how long have animals been in Perkins Woods, it's been over 100 years. How long has the Akron Zoo actually been incorporated? This coming year is our 70th anniversary, because we formed in 1953. So 2023 will be 70 years of the Akron Zoo. During that period of time, lots of things have shifted, because one of the key things that actually changed was that in 1979, the zoo became what we believe the first public-private partnership for a professional zoological park in the United States. The city of Akron at the time, reeling from the tire companies pulling out of the economy locally, was actually looking to close the zoo. The community rallied and leaders stepped forward to save the zoo, and the negotiation created the first, as far as we're aware, 501c3 not-for-profit zoological park in the USA. And that negotiation happened between 79 and 80. And the original group of founders, 2 of which have just made an amazing change at the zoo over time, included Roger Sherman of Akron Children's Hospital fame, who I know recruited Virginia to our board to be able to help us move forward. And then, oh gosh, Bill's last name, Colonel Bill, I'm blanking on his last name, Virginia, Bill Miller. I can't believe that I forgot. But when you come in the zoo in the front, he was one of the probably first 4 people recruited to that board. And these folks ended up working long and hard hours in those early days to separate out the Akron Zoological Park from the city of Akron to create what that public-private partnership would look like. We then spent 20 years from 1980 to 2000 operating strictly on earned revenue. Earned revenue in an uber small zoological park is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And it ended up, while it yielded, for example, the first accreditation to the Association of Zoos and Aquariums in 1989, it became very clear by 1999, because of the level of growth, that we needed to look at that public-private partnership differently. In 2000, after 3 years of appreciative inquiry work in every community in Summit County, I mean deep dive stuff, we had just opened Tiger Valley, bringing lions, tigers, and bears back to the Akron Zoo in 1998. It became very clear people responded. We were kind of really struggling in the late 90s to even reach a 70 or 80,000 person engagement across a year attendance-wise. Bringing Tiger Valley to opening ended up seeing that double. All of a sudden, we're hitting 150,000 people in a park that wasn't much bigger than about 4 acres. When you think about that across a year with the majority of the attendance coming in warm weather, it created some challenges for us. That appreciative inquiry deep dive started out with a question of, do you want a zoo in Akron? That was obviously the first question, because if the community didn't want a zoo in Akron, we wouldn't be here today and you'd be having another speaker. Then the next line of questioning was, what does the zoo in Akron now as you know it do really well? What would you want to see from a zoo in Akron if you were to choose to support it with your hard-earned money? And then those conversations led to an additional conversation with Summit County Council, and for the first time in 20 years, despite prior requests, that data allowed Summit County to allow us onto the ballot to be considered for public support for the very first time. Thank God it passed. We passed by 1%, and this is an important part of our story. That 1% passage made it possible to go from a zoo at the time that was between 1.5 acres to 4 acres built to where we are today with 55 acres put to use for the benefit of the people of Summit County and 70 acres together. That also ended up allowing growth so that we could make good on the promises that were made during those appreciative inquiry interviews. And that became a guiding light. So this is one of the things that made us very different from most other zoological parks and aquariums in the country. We built the Akron Zoo based on what the community said they wanted, not based on what we thought you needed. And that's at the time, this was turning everything on its head, because you usually go out to the experts and follow what the experts say. We said the voters of Summit County, the people of Summit County, were the experts, and we were to figure out how we fit with that. What came out of that initial property tax vote in 2000 was our capital and operational improvements, more animals, more habitats, more opportunities to learn, and a year-round zoo, which was critical because we were only open for 5 months a year prior to that ballot initiative. So the rest of the time, the gates were locked and the public were not allowed to come in. The animals were still there. Our staff was still there, but there was no engagement. What came throughout that period of time included our Barnhart Family Welcome Center, the Lehner Family Zoo Gardens, which was a direct promise and response back to those 50 plus in our community that came out of that appreciative inquiry piece. Penguin Point, Komodo Kingdom and Education Center with on-site classrooms, a catering kitchen, a place that you can actually rent to have your meetings, the only 4-star certified green restaurant in Ohio when it opened, and the first LEED certified structure in a zoological park anywhere east of the Rockies. The two that beat us actually were codified both at the Woodland Park Zoo and the San Diego Zoo, codified by their local zoning board. So it wasn't even a choice to put their money where their conservation mission was. But for us, it was. It was about merging all of these different activities into one structure and figuring out how to deliver leadership in energy and environmental design. The conservation carousel, which was made locally from sustainably harvested wood, also using materials to finish it that wouldn't pollute the environment, and it actually takes less energy to run that carousel than it does to dry your hair in the morning. So there's amazing things that have happened as we've gone through this journey. After that was Mike and Mary Stark Grizzly Ridge, Curious Creatures, Pride of Africa, Wild Asia, and we've grown in this time over the last 20 years from 33 habitats to 56. And they've moved from strictly animal habitats to true experiences for people, because we're looking to bring some of the best conservation stories the world holds to life in real time in these spaces. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So, stepping back, in 2019, and yes, there's a reason I'm going 1 year before the pandemic, our guest attendance on site, you'll note I started talking about pre-public support. We were struggling at the 70 to 80,000 mark. In 2019, we were just over 400,000 guests a year, so double the number of residents of the city of Akron. They actually represented people coming in from 14 counties, so it was a tremendous economic impact to Akron and to Summit County. We had 91,000 additional participants in our education programming across the board, 35,000 participants in field trips. We had almost 13,000 member households, 46 species survival plans on site. And these, when you come and you engage at the zoo and you really connect with some of the animals in our care, not all of them, but a lot of them are represented by species survival plans as assurance programs against extinction in nature. And you'll note down below, we also have 2 extinct species in nature that call Akron Zoo home. So if it wasn't for facilities like ours, they would already be gone from the face of the earth. We engaged in 21 conservation projects worldwide, and we were one of 237 AZA accredited zoos, and I'm going to get to a little more explanation around that a little bit later. We did find, as we finished calendar year 21, that for every public dollar that supported the zoo, we yielded $8 in economic impact back to Summit County, and even more so to the city of Akron. The reason that we began tracking this is we recognized that while, yes, we are a mission-driven not-for-profit, we are also a major economic driver located less than a half a mile from downtown Akron, and different stakeholders want to hear different things from us. And this became a very important conversation point, especially as we were looking to engage with people about publicly supporting us, either philanthropically or via our tax levy. Sustainability for us, I already kind of covered Komodo Kingdom as the first LEED certified structure in Summit County. We right now have more LEED certified structures on our 70-acre property than any other not-for-profit in the region. So it started with Komodo Kingdom. We have Grizzly Ridge is LEED certified, Wild Asia is LEED certified, Pride of Africa is LEED certified, and we're actually working on all projects moving forward based on board commitment to be a minimum of LEED Silver, because we recognize the return on investment in engaging with that, and it actually helps all of the support dollars, whether earned or provided, go further. Komodo Cafe, as I said, was the first 4-star green restaurant in Ohio. We reduced our water usage by 80% over a 5-year period in the park, and this was verified by a third party and the city of Akron. All of this by just kind of letting the staff go crazy to figure out how we can actually reduce our use of some of our on-site resources. We composted over 3.6 million pounds in 4 years, and now able to do that on site, and I take no ownership of the name, but the in-vessel composter we have on site is brand named Big Hannah, and she basically eats all of the organic waste that the Akron Zoo produces, with the exception of our hay, because we probably need a larger in-vessel to actually allow that cellulose to break down, so we continue to work on it. And when we look at the conservation programming, because remember that mission triangle is about connection, it's about supporting lifelong learning, and it's also about moving people to conservation action. We currently work globally on almost every continent, almost, not quite, and these conservation projects are picked because they actually support the programs that we have on our site and help us tell our education stories. For example, when I talk a little bit later about Pride of Africa's intent was to actually tell the very powerful story of rebuilding the pride in the South Rift Valley of Kenya, where the Masai Mara chose to change well over a millennia's worth of customs of their own people to save lions from extinction. So many of us actually will struggle to make minor changes in our daily routine because we want a cup of coffee and it's got a plastic lid, or, we want to drive instead of walking or biking. This was really difficult. This was changing basic customs that had been ingrained for 1,000 years. And yet they did it to protect the environment that they were stewarding. And we felt that was an incredibly powerful story to tell. And we brought the president of the Masai Mara, and we brought the primary investigator of Rebuilding to Pride to Akron. They helped us plan this whole experience. They were on the radio here, they were on the television here, they were in our local school systems, and in real time, we now can connect back virtually with Guy and John in Soralo whenever we want to, because we've told their story and we're about to expand the story to talk about the entire landscape coming up over these next 5 to 7 years. So that is one of the things that makes us very unique, especially when we start talking about STEM education and the ability to connect with real-world problem-based learning, because we have those connections, because we've built those support lines and we're telling those powerful stories. Now, enter COVID-19 pandemic. So this, for everybody, turned everybody on their ear, but here's really how it affected the Akron Zoo. Quick run through, March 17th, everything closed. Governor's mandate in relation to the response, we weren't sure if we were being treated like parks who were allowed to stay open, or if we were being treated like museums who were told to close, because we're kind of in between. We are a park, 70-acre park, but we also are classified by some in the government as a museum. Took us quite some time to figure it out, but we had to close the gates until we ended up finding that out. In the end, they classified us with museums and amusement parks, even though we were safer than the parks that had remained open, who had no way to control the number of people who were entering the parks, or at least we did. That's a conversation for a future time. On June 17th, we did reopen to the public again, but at 25% capacity. So we were allowed to have 25% of the normal and usual visitation that we would have expected historically. And that lasted from June 17th, 20 to June 3rd, 2021. So effectively right up to the July 1st date. What we saw during this period of time was a $3 million loss in generated revenue. We were also, though, with a lot of creative work internally and thankfully positive response up front from our friends in the philanthropic community, and later, once the government had gotten the Paycheck Protection Program in place, it also assisted to close some of that gap, but we managed to be the only zoo in the state of Ohio not to lay off any staff. And that was a commitment from our executive team to figure out other ways that didn't impact the animals and didn't impact our staff so that we could keep everybody whole, because everyone around us was shedding staff so quickly. And we knew, heck or high water, the way the mission survives is when the people survive. And that commitment had to be there, and it was very strong. If you look at our attendance and you actually see in this chart what occurred, we had virtually no attendance in 2020, but even though we had virtually no in comparison to the last few years, that attendance level was still higher than when I first got here 25 years ago. So even in the worst possible circumstances any of us could have imagined, that attendance was more than double when I walked in the door in 1997. So we actually did, in the grand scope of things, feel pretty good about that, because people still felt safe coming to the zoo. Granted, not in large numbers, but that told us something. And then looking for 21, still at the 25% standpoint, we ended up finishing the year quite a bit better. This was through September 12th. Between September 12th and December, we ended up reaching 386,000 people in total across that 12-month period, despite the first half of the year being tied with a 25% reduction. So over that period of time, our community partnerships looked quite a bit different. In the past, we were out there actively engaging with other groups and figuring out how we might be able to assist. Now we had to do all of that from a distance. And honestly, that hasn't cleared up yet. You know, you here as a group, you have some people online virtually, you have some people in the room. That really is a testament to the way society is right now, because there are those who feel comfortable coming back together in one spot, and there are those who don't. And we see this all across the board, and our partnerships have been no exception. We ended up moving, interestingly enough, all of our education programming online for free. We would normally reach about 90,000 people via that programming. By moving online, we reached over 4 million. And it was an incredible an interesting thing now to look back on and figure out what all of the assets were that caused it to work as effectively as it did. We put our parking lots to work and hosted meal distributions with restaurants that had closed and wanted to do goodwill, but they really didn't have the space to do it where they were located. We also hosted Red Cross blood drives because the blood mobiles couldn't go out. The spaces were too small. They didn't meet the 6-foot restrictions, so we turned Komodo Cafe and Curious Creatures and all of our classrooms downstairs into blood site distribution centers. We also, because we regularly worry about things like avian influenza, which we're currently sitting through, first time in my 35 years we've ever had to bring all of our birds in because of a pandemic in birds. In the middle of a pandemic in humans, who would have thought? But we had stockpiles of all of the PPE already in our veterinary services building when everything shut down, and we donated all of that to Summit County Public Health, and they distributed it to the people in need. And then our veterinarian actually figured out a way to create N95 masks out of veterinary fabric in our hospital, and we put our 120 volunteers to work sewing those masks and provided them to school children inside Akron Public Schools. So it was a matter of, okay, gates are closed. How are we going to partner differently? Because we need to be kind to ourselves, recognize the issues around self-care, kind to each other, recognize people need support, and kind to the community. Where are the needs? How could we fill them in? So it was taking who the Akron Zoo is and now deploying it in a different way. Through all of that, and I've said this before, large and small, we care for them all. That one of the extinct species we have on site is a snail, not much bigger than the nail on my pinky finger. And yet we're doing releases on the island of Fiji of Akron-bred snails to repopulate those islands. And without that, they would be extinct right now on the face of the earth. And it runs anywhere from that Partula snail up to the Sumatran tiger or up to our African lions. All of them are involved similarly in that kind of work. During the last few years, from 19 to today, we've grown from 57 to 61 animal habitats just in a short period of time. We've got 3 new animal experiences in sight. 2017 was Curious Creatures, 19 was Pride of Africa, and 2021 was Wild Asia. Should have been done in 2020. Pandemic pretty much took care of taking that off the option table. Our animal residents in the park, and sometimes I kind of do this as a contest, how many animals do you think actually call the Akron Zoo home? Well, we went from 2,300 animals and 239 species in 2016 to 2,600 animals and 252 species coming out the other side of the pandemic in 2021. And 439 individual animal births at the zoo since 2016 across all of the different taxa that we care for, yielding 53 species survival plans on site and the extinct species that I already talked about. At the same time that this focus on animal care and conservation is so critical, one of the other pieces that we've been working on for the better part of a decade now, that really, with what happened surrounding George Floyd, I'm not talking about any of the politics in this, but when you look at how social justice has moved across our society, there is strong recognition that including people is truly critical. And it's not up to you to say, I've included you. It's up to you to figure out where the barriers to inclusion are and then put yourself in the shoes of the other person and say, do you feel included? And bottom line, feelings aren't right, feelings aren't wrong, they just are. And acknowledging them and then working in partnership as you move forward becomes the most critical way to engage all voices. And for us, our commitment to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion came out of that idea that you have to start with the acknowledgement of feelings wherever they are, and then the ability to work forward together in order to enable someone to be included, not just feel included. And for us, it was all about removing barriers. Because once we began to ask those questions and other people came alongside us so that we could have those conversations, barriers began to become obvious. First one was a socioeconomic barrier for us, and we ended up joining the Institute of Museum and Library Services out of DC in an effort called Museums for All. And in fact, the entire Arts Now community in Akron joined together to launch this as one, so that we could actually work together with our local busing agencies in order to be able to bring folks who would have otherwise been separated from us for a socioeconomic reason physically into our facilities. When you come to the zoo, you'll notice we have a bus stop inside the zoo. So anybody can ride any of the Metro Transit Authority and actually be dropped off and picked up physically inside our gates. That was really important. A participant of Museums for All also provides basically a 75% discount on gate admission. So a family with an EBT card can show up, use their EBT card, just like a membership card, and they will get 4 $3 admissions to the zoo every day if that's what they want to do. Because this was meant to remove that socioeconomic barrier, and it's been quite effective, and not just at the zoo, but also at Stan Hewitt and the Art Museum and every other ticketed venue in Greater Akron that participated through Arts Now. We also advanced partnerships with Culture City and became the first sensory certified facility in the state of Ohio and the second zoo in the nation to achieve that. Birmingham Zoo beat us by a month. So it was a little bit of a competition there for a while, but why would you choose that? Well, 1 in 5 human beings on planet Earth are affected by sensory concerns, 1 in 5. So look around the room. According to the statistics, at least 4 or 5 of you in this room, whether you choose to talk about it publicly or not, are affected. And the way the zoo chose to engage and make people with sensory concerns comfortable and included worked quite well. We now have people coming from out of state physically to visit the zoo because of how we've addressed these concerns. There are other things here, including partnerships with the Summit Developmental Disabilities Board for Inclusion Day, which is a free day at the zoo if you wear orange to show support for those who are developmentally disabled, Dream Night with Akron Children's Hospital, and most importantly, internally, as all of this was unfolding, it became very clear that not everybody understood why diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion was so critical. And it was so critical because today everybody talks about justice, but nobody really knows what it is. And here's what I mean by that. Justice as a word is just a definition in a dictionary until it affects you, or your child, or your spouse, or your family member. Then you begin to acknowledge what it really means. And we needed to look for a way to make justice be real for the people who worked at the zoo so that we could actually begin to engage even more folks, and here I go walking away from the camera again, be able to engage even more folks with the right mindset at the zoo. So we, in 2019, in January, laid out Just Culture for the very first time. Just Culture was all about moving away from a disciplinary process that was based on really a standards of conduct and moving them, and if I'm getting long, I see watch checking, please tell me. No, that's okay, because I can move through it a little bit quicker. But Just Culture was really deployed as a way to teach the staff truly what does justice look like from a personal perspective. When something goes wrong at work, what portion of that might have actually been the responsibility of the zoo as the employer versus the employee alone. And when you look at that, it shifts the mindset away from someone's in trouble to how can we continuously learn so that we continuously get better. Because part of our culture is continuous learning and continuous improvement. And this fits so well, and it helped the staff understand what justice looks and feels like so that when they're engaged with conversations with our guests, it has become personal because they've gone through those exercises and they understand what it's like for them, and they can then better provide empathy to others. Because when you've never been in a position like that where you've had to think it through before you're trying to provide empathy to someone else, it can feel empty. The last piece on this slide, which was really just as important, the Institute of Museum and Library Services did come forward and support us now at an even greater level with a federal grant to dive deeply into how the people of Greater Akron feel about the Akron Zoo, to actually dive into those who represent our African American community, our new immigrant community, various different groups of people, so that we could begin to truly hear through focus groups and through community interviews from third-party individuals who would create the psychological safety to have difficult conversations. We would actually know and understand where we sit, and then be able to take intentional action to bring people even closer to the zoo as we move through this next decade of action, as the United Nations refers to it. So, we know that we're the place where kids continue to love to learn. We also know that we are positioning ourselves as the premier STEM provider for Northeast Ohio as we move through this next decade, for many of the reasons that I've already laid out to you. Just the fact that over a 4-year period, we moved engagement in our STEM programming in person from 70,000 to 91,000 without trying very hard. We see that there's tremendous opportunity here, especially with the explosion that happened during COVID that jumped it from 90,000 to 4 million. We also know that we need to continue celebrating success. The best way to pull people along with you is by their choice. So as they're involved, they need to feel good about that involvement moving forward. And one of the things for us that was very personal that happened in the midst of all of this, we were up for our next accreditation inspection, and I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, in June of 2021. Not the best time to have an accreditation inspection, because we were still reeling from a lot of the things that had to be dealt with differently through the pandemic, but we were also grateful that they didn't come out in July of 2020 when they were originally scheduled, mainly because everything was closed. With this particular inspection, which is very similar to what hospitals handle if being accredited as a cancer center or a heart center, for professional zoological parks, this is the global accreditation. And we became one of 3 zoos in the history of accreditation to have a perfect inspection. And honestly, for my staff and I, none of us expected it. The orders in the field were do the right thing for the right reason at the right time, and don't worry, because there was an awful lot of staff stress at that point in time. But the end result was incredible. And something that out of the thousands of inspections that have been done over the last 50 years, we are now one of 3 to have ever achieved this. I can't express enough my appreciation to my staff, because this is not a one-person deal. This is an entire organization of teamwork. As we move forward, we invite you, if you have not come back to the zoo, to come and engage with Pride of Africa for all the reasons I've already outlined. We also invite you to come, to come on out and experience Wild Asia, which is a primary focus on the decade of action from a climate change and management standpoint, not politics, but the actual data and the science behind what is happening today. And then we are in the middle of our strategic planning. It'll be over by the end of this year, but we will be focused on delivering an expansion of Pride of Africa by 2028, which will include what everyone has been asking us for 20 years, which is an engagement with giraffes as the centerpiece. Now, I'm sure I've run out of time, so I'm just going.
Doug, this was great. I don't want to, the Akron Zoo is such an asset to our community, so we appreciate this. I just wanted to give Linda a chance to wrap, and anyone that has to run because we're at 1 o'clock or just a couple minutes past, if anyone has to go, please do. Are you able to stay behind?
I'm able to stay to do questions, and I'm done at that point, so thank you.
No, this was phenomenal. Yeah, I hated to cut you off because this is wonderful.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Linda, do you want to?
We have a thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you card for you.
Thank you so much. What an exciting time, and thank you for being able to stay a little bit longer for Q&A. And again, don't forget, Boo in the Zoo. please, it's a fun time. And also, Katie, tonight, hot day, Saturday, regatta. See you next Tuesday at Akron Zoo. And then, don't forget, today's our last day of post. We'll see you on October the 4th at the Greek Church. All right.
Who wants tickets?
Tickets.
Anyone else by raffle? Okay. Doug, are you able to pull our daily lotto winner? Sure. All right. Tom will bring that over to you here.
Want me to just yell it out?
Yeah, just yell it. Here you go, yeah.
It ends in 653. So 228-653.
228-653. That Tom, you're on. 228-653. Yeah, all right.
Was it Bill that left?
Maybe. Oh, it is Tom. Okay.
Oh, it's Tom. Okay,
All
all right.
Congratulations, Tom. Here, I'll do the progressive pop with him. So, Doug, thank you so much.
All right, thanks again for everything, and thank you for being here. And let's celebrate the Akron Zoo and have a great time. Any other announcements? Everybody online, thank you. Well, don't forget, we'll see you next Tuesday at Akron Zoo, and then on the 4th of October, we'll be at the Greek Church, so you better be there. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.